Welcome to episode 53 of the Headspace and Timing podcast, a show brought to you by the Change Your POV podcast network. Today's guest, Derek Abbey from the Travis Manion Foundation, talks about the need for veterans to take control of their own lives after leaving the military and taking care of what they need to take care of in order to make that post-military life successful.
The reality of PTS and other injuries that our military population might be dealing with or suffering from, those are all realities, and of course we acknowledge that. And what I like to say is those are realities, but those aren't the primary identifiers of our military. They're realities in the military, but they're also realities in other cultures and communities. And so let's focus on some other stuff as well. We'll deal with the realities and we'll help those that need help with that. But let's not buy into the message. Let's own our own brand. So when somebody goes out and, talks or exacerbates a negative message about the military, what sphere do I have, or what voice do I have to lend the truth to that?
Welcome to the Change Your POV podcast network. You're listening to Headspace and Timing, a show dedicated to breaking down the stereotypes about veteran mental health. My name's Dwayne France, and I'm a combat veteran of both Iraq and Afghanistan. After I retired from the Army, I took on a new mission as a clinical mental health counselor for my fellow service members. If you served in any branch of the military, you're familiar with the M2 machine gun, the 50 cal. It's one of the most effective weapons in the military's arsenal. If the weapon's headspace and timing wasn't set right, however, it was just a huge useless chunk of metal. Veterans can be rendered inoperable if their headspace and timing isn't set correctly either. That's my goal with this show, to change the way that we think and talk about veteran mental health and reduce the stigma against seeking support. Each week, we'll talk with mental health professionals, veterans, and those who support veterans, service members, and their families. We're going to have real and honest conversations about a topic that most just don't like to talk about, veteran mental health. Let's jump into this week's conversation. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Headspace and Timing Show, a podcast where we're trying to change the way that you think about and talk about veteran mental health. We often have conversations with veterans regarding their mental health journey and even providers talking about how they got into and support veteran mental health. Today's show is a little different, but not too off base, because veteran mental health doesn't mean just being broken. It doesn't mean, of course, if you've listened to the show, it's not just about PTSD and TBI. But it's about tapping into the strength that we had while we were in the military and supporting that and really giving back to our communities. And that's what my guest today is here to talk about, and in an organization that he's with, the Travis Manion Foundation. So my guest today is Derek Abbey. He is currently the program director for the West region for the Travis Manion Foundation, and we'll kind of get into it. So Derek, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. We were actually just, as we record this, it's snowing in Colorado and definitely not snowing in San Diego. So all is right with the world in our respective regions. But Derek, maybe before we get started about Travis Manion Foundation, I'd like to have you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and kind of how you got involved in TMF.
Yeah, I'd love to. I grew up in Washington State for the most part, from the Seattle area, and just kind of had a little bit of a crazy childhood. Grew up with a single mother, bounced around a little bit, and then when I was 13, my mom unexpectedly passed away. So I was kind of alone. Spent some time with some aunt and uncles, and then went on to kind of go out on my own. And when I was 18, I ultimately ran away to the military, and I truly believe that the military saved my life. I needed structure. I needed a system that I could succeed in, and that's what the Marine Corps provided for me. I succeeded in it. I wasn't expecting that I was going to do a full career, but I did. I did 23 years. enlisted right out of high school, was a communicator initially, and then did pretty well in my initial enlistment. And the Marine Corps decided to invest in me a little bit more. I was selected for a commissioning program, ended up going to college, getting a couple degrees in history, and spending the rest of my time as a Marine Corps officer, and ended up in aviation, special operations community, doing all sorts of amazing things. The Marine Corps invested in me more, sent me back to college. I ended up earning a master's degree. And it was kind of that second time in college that I found out really what I was going to be doing post Marine Corps. They sent me to the University of San Diego, where I got a degree in higher education leadership. And that was when there was this big influx of military into higher education. And so while I was kind of figuring out what I was going to research and what I was going to study, I really took a look around me and said, well, where can I have an impact? What skills do I have? What voice do I have that I can have an impact? And it was kind of right in front of me. So I started doing a lot of work around military and higher education, and did my research around that for a couple of years. Finished that degree. I did a case study of some programs, created a thesis that has been used to help start up a lot of programs around the nation. Still had my payback to the Marine Corps, so I went and ran a schoolhouse as my twilight tour. But when I retired finally in 2014, it was that work that I did for that 2 years during that master's that translated to the next phase of my life. I had found this niche. I had grown this capability, things that I could have an impact on, a sphere that I could influence. And so I came back to San Diego, initially started working in higher education. And it was when I was making that transition from the Marine Corps that I really told myself, I'm only going to do what I want to do for the rest of my life and have an impact on the things that I want to have an impact on. And so started at San Diego State working in their military program, doing outreach to the military community. Shortly after that, I was hired away to take over the University of San Diego's program, and ran that for a couple of years. And while I was running that, I connected with the Travis Manion Foundation. You know, as somebody running a military program in a quality higher education institution, especially in a place like San Diego, I would get inundated all the time by nonprofits and others working with the military. And a lot of them, unfortunately, not doing very good work. And so really had to vet who we worked with and pay attention to the impact that they were having, the image that they had. And I saw the Travis Manion Foundation. I saw the work that they were doing, and we started working together on multiple projects. And then shortly after, they invited me to come take over the West region. And about 6 months ago, I took over this role, and I'm absolutely loving it. And now I'm here today.
and that takes us up to current day. I mean, it's always amazing how we can sum up, a quarter of a century in about 5 minutes.
I know,
sometimes, but even that journey really it sounds familiar. Same thing sort of as me. I was tired of sleeping in my dad's basement, and the military is as much a running away from something as it is a running towards something. And then it didn't sound like you really anticipated the officer route, in the Marine Corps, right? You went in to just kind of, see the world and do crazy things. But it seems like you were surprised by some stuff along the way.
Yeah, I had desires. I was an 18-year-old. I knew I wanted to go to college. I knew I wanted certain things, but I didn't have a lot of systems around me that provided me with the knowledge and direction to access them. First generation college student, so I knew I wanted to go to college. I just didn't know how to do it, and they provided that for me. They provided a lot for me, and I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have structure around me. The Marine Corps definitely provided that, but it's what I needed at the time. A system that I could succeed in, and it wasn't that difficult. You do X, and you're going to be okay. You do a little bit more than that, you're probably going to do pretty well. And I really wasn't anticipating a lot of the things that happened in my career, the directions that I would go. But as I grew into being a Marine and kind of bought into the values and what was important, I learned a great deal. I became far more confident in my abilities, and then really started exploring the opportunities that were available and keeping a lot of doors open. I was commissioned a ground officer. I didn't think I was going to end up in aviation, and then I ended up being a Hornet guy and an F-18 Wizzo, did everything you want to do in an F-18, except for an actual air-to-air engagement, but supporting a lot of Marines, soldiers, sailors, airmen on the ground, and doing some amazing work with some amazing people. And then I left that community and became a plank holder up the road with Marine Special Operations Command. Found myself again surrounded by some of those most amazing people in the world. And it was this opportunity to continue to just be a sponge. I was a sponge my entire career. And that really benefited me because I realized how much I can learn from the people around me. And it wasn't just Marines. So when I was starting to work outside of those circles, learning from all these other people that were rich resources beyond the Marine Corps. And I felt it's just impacted me immensely. And it's allowed me to kind of grow my sphere and continue to give back through the things that I've learned through my experience in the military and then outside of the military.
And that really sets things up, I think, very well for transition. It sounds like your transition, definitely don't want to make it sound like it was, all wine and roses and everything was great. But you didn't get into aviation, as you left the Marine Corps. You moved in a totally different direction. You redefined yourself. And a lot of veterans that I talked to as a clinician, and probably many of the ones that you saw definitely in higher education, is they don't even realize that they need to reinvent themselves or even have the ability to reinvent themselves. If they were in logistics in the Marine Corps or if they were in medical in the Army, then they feel as though they need to sort of continue that out of the service. Did you find that redefining of yourself easy?
I wouldn't say it was easy. And I see a couple things in what you explained there that I've personally dealt with, and then I've worked with several other military members around. That couple years that I spent in college prior to exiting was kind of this kind of early exit or a little bit of an experience outside of the military. And it allowed me to explore my other identities. Who is Derek besides Derek the Marine? And it turned out that, it's Derek, the guy that knows about higher education. It's Derek, the guy that knows how to run these systems in colleges. It's Derek, the guy that can help with other Marines transition and a father and, other things. So, and I really spent some time looking at that and also giving those things value and realizing that, yes, I've been a valuable Marine. I've been able to have an impact on all sorts of things, but I can also be valuable in other places. And the other side of that is the self-efficacy piece. I control my destiny because once that military system disappears, it's no longer telling you what to do. So if you were that logistician or you were that medic, corpsman, whatever it happens to be, you can continue to do that, but you can also do whatever it is that you want or try to do whatever it is that you want. And I talk to all sorts of service members, and usually when I'm working with our own programming in Travis Manion Foundation, I have some discussions about that because, man, that is really, really scary for a lot of people. And I understand it. We grew up in this system that provides so much for us. The military is this, immense system that has so much control over your life, but it's also very, very stable. And when that system disappears, and it's absolutely not replicated outside of the military, you are the one in control, and that can get really, really scary. And we're afraid of failing, so sometimes we'll pick the easiest path. And I know what it means to be a logistician, so I'll just continue to do that. Or I was talking to the captain, lieutenant so-and-so, or gunny, or master chief so-and-so, and they said, hey, this is what you did in the Marine Corps, so you should go do X. And when I talk to folks that hear that, or that's the approach that they're taking, I stop the conversation right there and say, what do you want? What do you want to have an impact on? Where do you want to go from here? Because it's not up to gunny and the captain. It's up to you. And you have all the power. That system's gone, or it's leaving soon, and you have complete control over that. And I know it's scary, but let's see what happens. And it takes a little bit of time, and it is super, super scary. But I think that's where we lean into, the things that I know we're going to end up talking a little bit more about, that purpose, that meaning, that generativity, that legacy that you want to have an impact on.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And I'm really appreciative to be able to talk about this. And actually, it was Greg Call is the one that connected with this. So a shout out to Greg making the introduction. But you're talking about different aspects of veteran mental health than what most people anticipate, right? Most people think about, when I as a clinician talk about veteran mental health, we're talking about a diagnosis. We're talking about depression or substance abuse or PTSD, sort of those deficits that people, rightly or wrongly consider it goes along with military service.
Right.
But you're talking about those, and you called it nebulous, I think, earlier, but it was just this open thing where it is that purpose and meaning, and how do I meet my needs? What do I even be able to define my needs? My family and things like that. And so that is as much a part of the success after the military is understanding that, and that's a part of our mindset, our mental health, and sort of the way that we look at the world. You're actually you're still in school, right? So you're still haven't given up. But that's the kind of thing you're looking for veterans, or looking at for veterans in your current research, right?
Yeah. So I continue to do my research around military and higher education, and I've been working in that for a while and studying it for a while. And as I was going through, I was really kind of interested in why some were doing really well and why some were finding themselves in maybe institutions or organizations that they didn't need to be in. But so I really started to explore, problems that I was running into and working with this population, and how we could address it in a positive way. And it seemed like the earlier that intervention could occur, the better that this person or these people were going to be in making their decisions or making more informed decisions. And so I really started exploring factors influencing decision making of our veterans when they're selecting college. And as I started delving into that further, I really started taking a look at the transition piece, and I started getting almost annoyed by hearing the transition word. And and so, I kind of stopped for a second, and I thought, when we were in the military, I was in a constant transition, and so is everybody else. You're preparing for a deployment, you're going on deployment, you're coming back from a deployment, you're getting orders, you just got orders, you're in a new unit, you're doing all this thing, and it's you and your family and whoever else that's close to you that's constantly going through transition. And then I thought some more about society in general. We're not this stagnant society that just sits in one place, and so everybody's going through some sort of transition. And you don't go and work for a company. For the most part, this doesn't happen anymore, where, okay, I've been here for 40 or 50 years, I get my watch and I retire, and I've been in the same neighborhood for. Now, some people that does occur, and that's fantastic, but for the most part, we're all in transition. So what is it about this specific transition that's really unique? And, you mentioned kind of Maslow's needs. So we all need to get a job, and we need to take care of ourselves, and we need shelter, we need food, and all those stuff. And so when I would hear a lot of people talk about purpose, I think that was really the shallow piece that most people throw out there when they say purpose. You need a job. Okay. And most transition programs are, we're going to connect you with employment. And that is very needed. But then I started looking at other things like the adult development piece, and things like identity, intimacy, and what some people call purpose. I'll say, yeah, purpose and generativity and longevity or legacy and things like that. So it gets a little bit deeper, passion, meaning, all those things, and they're really kind of stacked on top of each other. And I know you've written about it, where you don't have to find them all in the same place, and you don't, but it is important to look for them, because that identity, intimacy, and purpose from day one is provided by the military system, and it's a unique system that identity. The more you buy into being a Marine, the more the system rewards you. And they're visible symbols that you and everybody else can see. You know, you get promoted and everybody knows who you are, what rank you are. When you walk in a room, you have a certain level of authority based on that position. Intimacy, not the romantic type, but the type that we get from the interactions, shared hardship and common mission, and depending on each other to accomplish that mission, and those bonds that we create with the men and women that we serve with. And then those become even more intense if we find ourselves in combat situations and things like that. And of course, purpose. From day one, you're responsible for that person next to you in boot camp or OCS or whatever it happens to be. And then that grows pretty quickly to a fire team, a squad, a platoon, a ship, a battalion, a squadron, whatever it happens to be, your unit. And that includes people, millions and millions of dollars of equipment, and then often lives, the lives of the people you served with, and then in certain situations, the lives of a potential enemy. Now, when you leave that system, all of those things disappear and they're not replicated anywhere else, you know, and you can literally go through some, you know, an identity crisis. And what is my new purpose now? Is it just a job? Or are you just thinking about those lower levels of that Maslow's triangle? And then how do I have healthy relationships with other people that aren't necessarily a Marine, soldier, sailor, airman, coastie, whatever it happens to be, and really exploring that. And so through a lot of the work that I've done, we've intentionally tried to, you know, one, create systems and support around those things, but also have open conversation and dialogue about it. And sometimes people are a little bit resistant, but then I find them coming back a little while later and be like, hey, what were you saying about X, Y, and Z? And then once they start investing in those things, just flourishing or thriving or flowing, and, you know, depending on what terminology you want to use, it's just amazing to see once we kind of start exploring those things and investing our time and energy into making sure they're right, the amount of success that can occur.
Now, I can see how that really does translate well to higher education, because that is a stepping stone, a gateway, you know, and you probably even more than I do, but as well as I know, is that not all veterans are using college just to go to college. Of course, with our generous benefits right now, it simply pays the rent, right? You know, so
Yeah.
a lot of times veterans will perhaps go to college maybe for the wrong reasons and tend to flounder around. But a degree or going to college is not an end in and of itself. It's a stepping stone. It is a gateway to another world. But it has a little bit of a structure that will allow the veteran to sort of transition through that, you know, using that word, or be able. You have an identity of a student that can bridge the identity of between Marine to veteran, or something like that. In one of the earliest podcast episodes, a fellow mental health professional, Tim Weinecke, who also where I focus on justice-involved veterans, he focused on veterans in mental health and higher education. And he would say that he would see veterans maybe in the first year, maybe 18 months of college, they're wearing the clothes that they pulled out of the duffel bag, and the beard and everything is scraggly. But there's a certain point almost, and it sounds like, where that light bulb comes off and they come back to you and said, what are you thinking? And then they actually start to establish a different identity beyond just that. Do you see, or did you see sort of the same thing when you were in higher education?
Yeah. And we would have open conversations about it because, you know, you can feel challenged a little bit when somebody says, well, you're no longer in the Marine Corps. Well, yeah, you know, I'm once a Marine, always a Marine, all that stuff. And so what I would say is, hey, you're always going to be a veteran or that military member. That's always going to be a part of you. But what else? What else are you? You know, you're a father, a mother, a sister, a brother, son and daughter, and then you know, now you're in college. You're an engineer. You're a historian. You're a writer. You're an academic. You're all these things. And what we would do in our systems in higher ed is we would kind of talk about our center, if you will, being a hub. And I was really passionate about it being a hub and not a bubble. So come here and connect with all these other things that you can have on campus. If you want to go be part of the Multicultural Center, then go do that. If you want to be part of student government, go do that, because you can have an impact on people there. You can work with people that aren't necessarily veterans themselves or have been in the military. And that's super, super valuable. One, because you can have an impact. And two, you're going to have to work with these folks later on. And once we kind of started doing that, and a few people did it, then other people started noticing it. It really started to explode. And then the veteran community was kind of taking over the campus. But then it also flooded off into the greater community. It's like, oh, well, I can have an impact on this circle as well over here, and I have this skill set, and this would be valuable to this organization or this group. Let me go see what I can do with them. And it was really neat to see, they're like, oh, there's other ways of having an impact than what I did in the past, and I'll always have that, but now I can do new things. And then when that happened, you'd see, oh, maybe I'm over the beard now. It's really itchy anyways. And, if you would have saw me a couple weeks ago, I had long hippie hair, and now I've gotten it short again. But, I kind of change my identity. It seems like all the time, not my identity, but I change my look all the time because I can. And, I look for things that are important to me now. And, it's funny you mentioned clothes, because I think I wear, a lot different clothes now than I did the first couple of years that I was getting out, that I was really still holding on to that Marine identity. And I still have it, and it's still definitely part of me, but there's different clothes that I wear now, and I see a lot of people going through that.
And I think that's very important, and it sounds like what you did there was really raise awareness to sort of awaken in the veteran the understanding that, there is more to you than just your service or just your rank or things like that. And then as we talk about networking as far as, what it can do for me, but a true network where more nodes add to the network makes the network stronger. And then I'm sitting here listening to you, and I can see why the Travis Manion Foundation it came to you, because that's what, as far as what I understand, the Travis Manion Foundation is. It's helping veterans understand these are the strengths that you have, and this is how you can make an impact in your community, and we're going to kind of help you kind of through that.
Well, you nailed it. It's using veterans and surviving family members to strengthen our nation's character. And our primary program is our Character Does Matter program, and that is delivered by veterans and surviving family members. And it's a character presentation to, most of the time it's to youth, so middle schoolers, high schoolers, even elementary schoolers, but sometimes athletes in college and stuff like that, around the value of character and how and why strong character can have a positive impact on the greater community. And we do that intentionally. I mean, the foundation of it is trace-based leadership theory, and every single service member that enters the military at any level and every level, that's the foundation of every leadership theory in the military. And so everybody that's been a service member at some level is an expert in this. And this is value that you can take from your service, provide it to another generation or an enormous sphere of youth and young adults, and kind of grow that sphere of influence, have that second, third order effect of your ability to have an impact on the nation. And so that's kind of the foundation program that we have. And that's the intention of the Travis Manion Foundation. And the reason that I ended up there is it completely aligns with my values and what's important to me. And I'll definitely invest in that. And that's what we've been doing. And it's just amazing, and it's fantastic to see the impact. It benefits the veteran and the surviving family members because they can see, oh, okay, yeah, here's the value that I bring from the military, and I can use this value to have an impact on others besides just other military members. It could be whatever, group you're connected to. Is it a school that your kids go to school at? Is it an athletic team that your son or daughter is playing at? Or is it just your neighborhood that you live in and you want to have a positive impact on? And it's pretty neat when we see our veterans and surviving family members thrive in these systems.
I think that is that's extremely critical. I've often said on the podcast here and written about. That's one thing I've been very intentional to do is find things in my post-military life that give me as much satisfaction. And it's not all has to do with veteran mental health. I actually have. I don't have long hippie hair. I have no hair, probably because I have a lot of different hats. But one of the things that I do is I am involved in my kids' school. Shortly after I retired, I found myself on the board of directors of a nonprofit of a charter school, and am now president of the board. And now that's been going on 5 years, and it's been probably one of the most rewarding things that I've done. And again, that's that next generation. It's me getting involved. It's me using my leadership skills to be able to do that. But I was looking for things like that. And many veterans, old or young, and I've seen it. It doesn't matter as far as rank or even officer enlisted, unless they're looking for that, they don't see that. And that, I think, is again what Travis Manion is really trying to do. Now, can you give us a little bit of background on what the Travis Manion Foundation is? Who Travis was and things like that.
Absolutely. So the organization was started about 10 years ago. We're going on the 11th anniversary of Travis's passing. So Travis was a Marine. He went to the Naval Academy, was commissioned, went off to do some amazing things. And then in 2007, April of 2007, he was killed by an enemy sniper in Iraq. And shortly after that is when his family decided to create the Travis Manion Foundation to move on in his legacy. And they have since then. And it has grown immensely over the last decade. We are a true national veteran service organization, and we're also a character organization. And so that's what we do is we want to serve our veterans and our surviving family members to provide them opportunities and to empower them to grow and strengthen America's national character. And we do that through our Character Does Matter programs, but it also is other programs that are having an impact on the community. So Operation Legacy happens across the nation, and that's encouraging and motivating community members to find ways of having an impact, a positive impact on their communities. And so and the guidance on it, when I talk to people and they want to be in Operation Legacy or they want to participate in Operation Legacy and they want to do a community service project, and they ask, well, what can I do? And I said, well, where does your imagination lead you? Or what is your sphere of influence? And kind of what we talked about earlier when we're looking at it, because it can be a veteran or it could be just a young adult or a teenager or something that's wanting to have an impact. Who can you have a positive impact? And it doesn't have to be 10 people. It doesn't have to be 100. Maybe it's just a few. And then let's explore that. And so they come up with some fantastic ideas, and then we support them through that, through our own programming. So some of the things that we've done here in San Diego are, things you would expect, a beach cleanup or something like that, planting trees, going and cleaning up some space for a community center. We painted a community center back on Veterans Day. But then it's also been some things that I wasn't sure would have an impact, but we were certainly willing to go explore. And like, hey, we got these flowers donated, and we think we want to go deliver them to the VA hospital. So, and they did, and we got some donations from other parts of the community for vases and stuff like that. And you wouldn't think that something like that might have a huge impact, but it did, not only on the patients and the people that were there in the hospital, but the staff and everything as well. And they wanted us to come back, and they wanted us to keep on doing it. So, it's all about having a positive impact on your community. And the cool thing about the Travis Manion Foundation, I mentioned the character piece, and it's based in this trace-based leadership theory, but it's also based in positive psychology, and it's future focused. We're not preaching the broken message. We're about the positive mental health that you're discussing, because it is more than that. So we want to counter some of the the messaging in the media to let people know about the value of service, the value of our military. And even though we're a veteran service organization, we're having an impact on these children and stuff. We tell them when we do this programming that this isn't a recruiting group. We're not here. We don't expect you to go into the military. Of course, that's an option, but it's really it's about the value of service. And these are examples that we use, and we dedicate it, all of our events to fallen service members. But where can you serve? How can you serve? Who can you have an impact on? And how do you invest in that? And let us help you with that. And we've had an enormous amount of success, and we're having an impact across the nation. And I'm absolutely, it's an absolute joy to be a part of it.
And I think something that you had said even earlier, definitely that there are many nonprofits proliferating, some that are serving veterans and some that are giving opportunities veterans to serve. But what I see and what other veterans that I talk to are seeing is that the ones that are emerging that are having the most impact are focused on exactly what you're talking about. What is the desire and the strength of the veteran? What does the veteran find is most important? And then there is a place for that, an organization for that. But it's very narrow. You're not out providing trips to the ball game, right? You're not doing the kind of sort of everything for everybody. You're really focusing on again character and leadership and trying to help a veteran have an impact on their community. And so I see Travis Manion Foundation, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot like Team Rubicon or the Mission Continues or Team Red, White, and Blue, where these are they're focused on what the veteran wants to do, not focused on some other set of criteria. Not bashing the legacy VSOs, of course, but the VFW and the American Legion, the Department of the DAV, they have specific criteria for inclusion and to be able to come in. There's an in and out, and they do a wide range of things because of their, again, legacy and their position. But veterans are looking for something different, and I think that's what. I call them the new age VSOs are really satisfying that need.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's you come out of the military with enormous set of skills and immense value, and so we want to be a system that taps into it. And we're not going to control what you do. We have our programmings that, of course, we want you to participate in, but all of them also allow for each individual's personality and each individual's story to be woven into it. And so it becomes personal. It is that person's sphere of influence. We can plug them into things that we have established, but we also really encourage our volunteers to, run with it. Find that group that you can have an impact on, and let us support you through the process of having an impact where you want to have an impact. And that's across the nation. So this kind of sphere is just continues to grow, and it grows in new ways, and it's pretty impressive stuff.
So what kind of and obviously having an impact on the community, but what kind of impact are you seeing on individual veterans or things like that?
Yeah, that comes back to the beginning of our conversation. This identity, intimacy, and purpose that I was talking about is the same measure that we use. So we have this foundation of positive psychology, and we use meaning, relationships, and engagement as our measurement. And these are kind of intangibles, but that's what we look at for success when we're looking at the success of the impact on the veteran or the surviving family member specifically. Are you finding that meaning, purpose, legacy, generativity from our programming and participating in it? Are you creating strong, positive relationships, not only with other veterans, but your greater community? And then are you engaged? And that's if you're in our programming, you're engaging in it. So that's a pretty easy one. But are you stopping there? We do want to know, is this kind of empowering you to continue to engage in other things and kind of realize like, oh, I can have an impact over here. I have a voice in this group, and I can have an impact here. Are you going on to be that board member for the charter school and then going on to be the president and things like that? That's not our programming, but hopefully we can build that confidence. And help you lean into that self-efficacy that you have control over your life now that the military system isn't. We're not going to tell you what to do, but we like to see folks do that. And so that's really the measurable that we look at when we're looking at the impact on the veteran and the surviving family members themselves.
And I think that's the big thing that, and I don't even say that veterans, current era veterans, again specifically that I know, not to say that they're missing that, but they're not aware of that. They don't realize that they have that capability. Again, if their needs aren't being met, if there's challenges and cracks in the foundation, of course cracks such as PTSD, TBI, but also not understanding how to meet my needs, not even recognizing that the sense of purpose and meaning is a need that I need to meet. That's again what Travis Manion and many of those other organizations are doing, are holding that up to the veteran and saying, we know you have value in you, even if you don't believe you have value in you. I've written about before, and I assume you will agree with me. If you might not, of course, correct me. But this current generation of veterans has the potential to be this century's greatest generation. We have, of course, the largest cohort since Vietnam, if you consider all the global war on terror, even larger. But combat veterans, specifically Vietnam veterans, are larger cohort than us. But we have a platform. We have the platform of the internet and social media. And veterans have the ability and even the responsibility to make an impact in their community and then even in the nation. And I don't know if they know that.
Yeah, there's a couple things there. And, it's talking about you have the ability to have an impact, and also the reality of PTS and other injuries that our military population might be dealing with or suffering from. Those are all realities, and of course we acknowledge that. And what I like to say is those are realities, but those aren't the primary identifiers of our military. They're realities in the military, but they're also realities in other cultures and communities. And so let's focus on some other stuff as well. We'll deal with the realities and we'll help those that need help with that. But let's not buy into the message. Let's own our own brand. And you mentioned Greg Call, and we've had conversations about this, owning our own brand. So when somebody goes out and, talks or exacerbates a negative message about the military, what sphere do I have, or what voice do I have to lend the truth to that, and to make people aware of the value that we have. And I do 100% agree with you that we have the potential to have an enormous impact and be the greatest generation of this century. And I think we're on our way to doing that. We just need to,
get out of our own way.
Yeah, keep on doing work and keep on serving. And yeah, not everybody realizes right away how much of an impact that they can have. And I don't think a lot of our systems, as far as transition systems, official systems in place within the DoD and perhaps the VA, spend a lot of time focusing on, kind of some of these intangibles, which can translate into pretty significant tangibles. And so that's where we want to fill that gap. And we want to make sure that people, our veterans community, are aware of this enormous potential that they have. And we want to provide a system and some programming that can make it easier for them to realize that and give them another opportunity to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I do agree with you. Again, I'm a recent, it doesn't seem recent maybe for me or maybe for you, but in the grand scheme of things, it is very recent since we've transitioned and we've gotten out. Actually, I have a mentor of mine who was a Vietnam veteran, and he and I were having breakfast, and he had said, how much long, how long have you been out of the Army? I said, it's been 3 years, right? I've been out for 3 whole years. And he was like, kid, you still have sand behind your ears. And he was like, talk to me when it's 15 or 20 years. And he was trying to, again, very gently to be able to say, we're still in that, early transition piece, but I do remember not getting what I needed necessarily from my transition assistance program, and we hear that a lot. And of course, there's limits and things like that, but they don't do a very good job of preparing the veteran's mindset to be able to get out. They give them the tangible skills. Again, in the name of the blog and the podcast, Headspace and Timing, the 50 cal. The transition programs teach you how to load the weapon, teach you how to shoot the weapon, teach you how to employ the weapon, but they don't make sure that the headspace and timing is set correctly. And so if you give them all of those skills but don't have the headspace and timing set right, then the weapon's not going to be effective at all. And that's where I see, again, Travis Manion really helping veterans say, this is what you need to do in this space. We're not providing therapy. We're not, yes, we can help you again. If there's clinical mental health conditions, we can do that. And there's this other piece that we're going to focus on and we're going to do well.
Yeah. And, all of those things have a purpose. So yeah, they do have to go through the tangibles and the basics. Like, hey, you do need to know how to write a resume and you do need to get some employment. And we also have a transition program, and our transition program isn't so much about connecting people to employment. It's more about adjusting that rudder so they're pointed in the right direction. So hopefully they're seeking the right employment, and then we can plug them into another program that is going to make that connection around employment. But our stuff focuses on, what are your strengths? How do you tell your story to somebody so they understand the value that they bring to what's important to them? And now we got that rudder pointed in the right direction. All right, now let's plug you into this other system that is about making that final connection. But if you're making that final connection first and it's not the right connection or that job, and that's when you kind of hear a lot of folks that, that all these veterans are moving on to their second job within the first year, and there's a lot of depth to that, because sometimes it's figuring out your own value. Sometimes it's the whoever it is that's working with you figuring out your value in these new systems, because it's not just a matter of, I'm going on to a job that I don't like, or I started in a job that I don't like, and that does occur, absolutely. But sometimes it's going on in a job and that boss realizing, or somebody else realizing how valuable they are after they've been there for a while and getting promoted or hired away to other jobs. And yeah, I haven't been out that long. I'm going on 4 years right now. And I think when I look back at it, I was like, I thought I was doing pretty good. I was pretty savvy in these circles. And man, I have learned so much since I got out of the Marine Corps about the systems outside of the Marine Corps that I've been involved in, but also so much about myself. And I know in 15 years, I'm going to look back at this point and say, man, I didn't know anything. But
clueless.
I'll keep on learning. And that's the cool thing, is that we have the opportunity to take our experiences from the past and use them to continue to influence our future, but we continue to grow. And you can continue to grow that sphere and continue to have a positive impact in all sorts of new ways. And that's, I'm happy to be a part of that, not only for myself, of course, but if I can play a small part in that with other people through my involvement with Travis Manion and other things, and it makes me feel good. And it's part of my own purpose.
Yeah, and I think that it's just that idea of continuous growth, but we can choose to grow, but we can also choose not to grow, or we can make the not choosing as a choosing in and of itself. And so staying stuck and staying stagnant, it might have been a story. Actually, I think it might even have been a story that I heard from Greg. But a couple years ago, I heard this conversation where a veteran was on the aircraft, on an airplane, traveling, and a young Marine in uniform was on board, and there was an older Marine who, of course, had his red satin jacket and had his, and so the older Marine had served in the early 80s, and they sat next to each other, and the veteran who was observing this, the entire flight, the old Marine was talking to the young Marine about the glory days and everything that he did, in the 5 years he was in the Marines. And he said, what a waste to be, how much more life experience did that, older Marine have to be able to speak into that young Marine, but then we can choose to kind of be in that glory day mindset. And that's sort of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I did all sorts of amazing things in the Marine Corps. I'm super proud of, but I have so many more amazing things to do. I'm only 44, so I got another 80, 90 years to live. That's what I like to think. But but yeah, that was a big portion of my life. 23 years, but some people, yeah, it was 4 years. But man, there's so much more that you can do, and you can use that experience to influence that in a variety of ways and continue to do great things. And you just got to focus that energy and figure out what that sphere of influence is and invest in it. And that brings up something that I've noticed in a lot of people. Is sometimes they get out and they do have this motivation and they think, I'm gonna do X, and it's kind of putting a flag on top of a mountain. I'm gonna cure cancer. And it's like, okay, and then they might fall short, and then it's this spiral down into a hole. And so I tell people, you can have that flag on a mountain, but what are the goals leading up to it? Who can you have an impact on today? And it doesn't need to be the country. It can be your family. It can be your neighborhood, your neighbors, these 2 or 3 people around you. And if you invest in them in the right way and you figure out how you can be successful doing that, I guarantee that'll just continue to grow. And it's kind of a healthy approach, build on success type of thing.
Yes, and I think another aspect is to make sure, and anybody getting out, make sure there's not somebody else already trying to put the flag on top of that particular mountain, because we get into each other's way of, well, I'm going to start a nonprofit to help cure PTSD, and we're all, shoving each other out of the way. Whereas there are organizations that you can partner with to be able to do the exact same thing. And your impact, again, that idea of more nodes in the network strengthen the network as a whole, as opposed to if we're all these little islands, then it's just wasted energy. And so I really appreciate what Travis Manion is doing to try to help veterans harness that positive mental health and the positive values that we had in the military to make that greater impact in our community. I think it's great.
Yeah, man, it's you mentioned that all these nonprofits. We got 12,000 nonprofits here in San Diego, and a lot of them are focused on the military, and it can be kind of sometimes like drowning in a sea of goodwill. And so if people are looking at things like that, or where can I have an impact? If you're not sure, that's an opportunity to kind of look around for people doing great things around you. And I like to try and surround myself with what I think are the best people and get close to them and learn what they're doing and learn from them. And it doesn't have to be another Marine, doesn't have to be another veteran. There's people out there doing amazing things. And if you kind of surround yourself with amazing people, somehow that seems to rub off. You can learn so much from them, or maybe jump on their team. And you bring a lot of value to any team. I think that we connect ourselves to. We have the potential to have an enormous impact, and folks will recognize that. And you can strengthen numbers type of things. We've seen that in the military too. If we align ourselves with the right group, the right organization, it could be the Travis Manion Foundation. I found myself here. I'm very happy here, and it's amazing to be a part of this huge group that's having an enormous impact. And it's just a matter of volunteering if you want to be a part of it. And signing up. It's that simple.
So, and that's if a veteran is looking around and they hear this, or maybe a caregiver is listening to this and saying, hey, here's an organization that sounds pretty cool. How would someone get involved with the Travis Manion Foundation?
The easiest way is through our website, travismanion.org. So if they go there, they can see where the closest regional offices or who's closest to them, and just reach out. We're a membership organization, and signing up is just that. It's a membership organization, but it doesn't cost anything. So if they sign up, they'll have the opportunity to go through our ambassador training, become an ambassador. If they're a veteran or a surviving family member, they can go on and become a mentor in our Character Does Matter program. and then they're in the system. And then it's a matter of, we can scaffold it for them in the sense that if we want to plug them into a program that we already have established, we can do that. But if they go through our training, they can also figure out ways that they can have this impact in their own circle. So we try and make it, at any level that somebody's ready to plug in to. So sometimes people, they're not ready to get up in front of a room full of kids and give a presentation. So, if that's the case, then, let us team you up with somebody so you can build up the knowledge and the courage to do it. It can be some of the scariest things. I've seen some pretty impressive Marines that did some pretty impressive stuff, but get them in front of a bunch of fifth graders and they're like,
it's amazing, the things, actually I was another Marine, as a matter of fact, he was on an earlier episode, David Smith, and we were talking about how, we weren't afraid or we didn't hesitate kicking down a door in Iraq. But for some reason we hesitate going into a therapist and talking about it. Right. But yeah, these guys that are jumping out of airplanes and riding boats across choppy waters, but then you get them in front of a group of kids and then they freeze up. It's pretty interesting.
Happens too often. Most of the time our folks are doing amazing work, and we want them on our team. We want them to be members of the Travis Manion Foundation. So it's as simple as going to the website travismanion.org and signing up to be a member.
That's great. I really appreciate you taking the time, Derek, and I'm going to make sure that we have the connections to that in the show notes. If somebody wanted to reach out, maybe talk to you personally, do you have some maybe social media or connection information that we can provide?
Yeah, so social media, it's the same thing. If they go onto social media and go up in the search window and search Travis Manion Foundation, they're going to find our social medias, and that's how they can connect with me. If they're in the Southern California area, right on the website, if they go in and they fill out, once they put in their zip code, they're going to get connected with the West Region, which is my office, and it'll be me or one of my team members that'll reach out to them eventually, and we're happy to bring them into the office or into the fold here in Southern California or in the West Region. And if for some reason they connect with me and I'm not their regional director, then I'll definitely make a warm handoff to whoever it is in their region. If it's anywhere in the country, all the way from here to New York, and we'll plug them into the right folks. And of course, they can find me on social media, so they can link up with me on LinkedIn or anything like that. So it's Derek Abbey, and you search that in the window, and you'll find my face on there.
Sounds good. Once again, I really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully we will be able to continue to support Travis Manion and the great work that they're doing.
Awesome, Dwayne. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
You're listening to Headspace and Timing on the Change Your POV podcast network. As Derek and I talk about, veteran mental health and getting your headspace and timing set correctly isn't just about PTSD and TBI. As you know from my Veteran Mental Health Bootcamp series, there's a whole different aspect of mental health and post-military life, doing something that you enjoy that makes an impact in your community. The Travis Manion Foundation is a great opportunity to connect with an organization that helps veterans do exactly that. And, as inspiration, we can look to service members like Lieutenant Manion who live their lives of character and sacrifice to serve our nation. Derek mentions his background briefly, but I wanted to tell you more about him here. Growing up in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, Travis was known for his strong leadership qualities, athleticism, and academic achievement. Upon graduation from the United States Naval Academy, he decided to follow in his father's footsteps and was awarded a commission into the United States Marine Corps. After finishing at the top of his class at the basic school in Quantico, Virginia, Travis was assigned to 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, Camp Pendleton, California, with whom he deployed to Iraq for his first tour of duty. In 2006, Travis was selected as an experienced Iraq war veteran from the 1st Recon Battalion to become part of a military transition team with 10 other Marines that would train and partner with an Iraqi Army battalion in Fallujah, Iraq. On April 29, 2007, First Lieutenant Manion, his fellow Marines, and Iraqi Army counterparts were ambushed while searching a suspected insurgent house in the Al-Anbar province of Iraq. Leading the counterattack against enemy forces, Travis was fatally wounded by an enemy sniper while aiding and drawing fire away from his wounded teammates. Travis Manion made the ultimate sacrifice that day. His selfless actions allowed every member of his patrol to survive. For his actions, Travis was awarded the Silver Star and Bronze Star with Valor. His legacy continues to grow through the work of the Travis Manion Foundation, inspiring people to live with character and make an impact by serving others. We can all remember Travis by carrying out the values that defined his life. This sacrifice serves as an example to service members, but the focus of the Travis Manion Foundation is not the manner of his passing, but the way he lived his life. If you're interested, make sure to check out more at travismanion.org. As you come to the end of this episode, be sure to tune into episode 54 when I have a conversation about another organization that's focusing on supporting veteran mental health and wellness in post-military life. Casey Kelly from the Warrior Wellness Alliance, a program of the George W. Bush Institute, will be sharing how her organization is bridging the gap between veteran organizations like the Travis Manion Foundation and veteran-focused mental health organizations like mine. This is the kind of thing that we need in the veteran advocacy space, a network connection that makes all of the partners stronger and more effective. I'd like to thank the Change Your POV Podcast Network for hosting this show and highlighting the critical importance of veteran mental health. We want to hear from you. You can reach out to me via email at dwayne@veteranmentalhealth.com. You can find me at Twitter @TheCounselingVet, or head on over to Facebook and look for the Change Your POV Squad. You can find the show notes for this episode and all the episodes by going to veteranmentalhealth.com or changeyourpov.com. Sign up for updates on either or both so you don't miss another episode. While you're at it, check out the other great shows in the Change Your POV Podcast Network. The show about remembering our military history and reviving our warrior spirit, Changing Hearts and Minds. The show about outdoor activities that us veterans love so much, Neophyte in the Woods. The show that helps us get going at the beginning of the week, Motivation Monday. And Attack Fridays, the show that brings you actionable tips, tricks, and coachable knowledge to help you make the best of your transition. While you're checking out the other shows, drop us a review in iTunes or whatever podcast platform you're listening to. The reviews really help spread the word about what we're doing. If you're looking for the total package for all the information you need to live the life you want after leaving the military, you found it. If you know of a buddy who's looking for the same info, share it with them so they can find it too. I want to thank Doc Todd for his permission to use his track, Not Alone, from his amazing album, Combat Medicine. Doc Todd is somebody who's trying to bring veteran mental health out of the darkness and into the light, and you can get the album by going to therealdoctodd.com. Check it out, because remember, veterans, you're not alone. Ever.
The struggle is real, found a feast and lost a soul. Eventually my drinking, it got out of control. There in darkness I roam, struggling to find home. See, suddenly death didn't feel so alone. 22 a day, destination unknown. It could have been avoided if you picked up the phone, but now you're gone, so I guess all we get is the tone. Nothing but bone weeds, overgrown, pushing up stones. I've triumphed over enemies, co-created enemies. Broke out facilities that tried to put an end to me. R.I.P. I'd rather grind in tranquility. Authentic tendency, embrace my ability. Gave every shred, every last thread of my identity. Conquer my fragility, eliminate the enemy. Deliver me, God, from temptation. Tell me that this life is just a matrix. Need a facelift, back to basics. Vision LASIX, I only feel alive when I hear the bass kick.
Oh, I try so hard to have faith. I bow my head and I pray. Lord, please let me have strength to carry on and keep standing.
Stand up.
How this life so demanding. So much pain, I need plenty. I hurt each time I wake, but with you I'm not alone.
Not alone. Yeah. You're not alone.
Oh yeah. And every time that I fall, I'ma call on you, pick myself back up again.
Yeah, just pick up the phone, you're not alone. Just pick up the phone, you're not alone, man. Just pick up the phone, you're not alone. Yeah, pick up the phone, I'm right here. And I love you guys. Take those bottles out, dog, and pour them in the sink. Take the needles out your arm and the gun away from your forehead. It's time, man, you've been through enough pain, stand up. It's time to stand back up. All my veterans, man, Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard. Get up, you know.